How are we now?
I hear you. I still got a buzz. I mean, it sounds like the lights. Well, no, but it sounds.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can do okay. It's like, I got it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. Does anyone have a box, a milk crate, anything to elevate the? This will work. Oh no, that has a signal. Yeah, just all my stuff is in. Yeah, I know.
Oh, did you put it online?
Yeah.
Oh, then we would have to do it.
All right.
Try live.
All right, we're gonna try. We're online. We're on. Really bad. One, two, three, four, five. I'm on mic. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you should get a mic. Mic. No, we're on mic. We're on mic. I went to line. He yelled at me. So I went back to mic.
You're online right now, or
I'm on mic. Mic. I'm coming out of that speaker. It's the output out of that speaker. I just plugged it into the output out of the soundboard, and that was the screaming that you guys heard.
It's better. It's a lot better. It's usually. I got 14 kids that can sit down and fix this. He does. Have you checked with the venue to see if they've got any drop cords or anything?
What?
Have you checked with the venue to see if they've got any drop cords?
Any what?
Drop cords?
Oh, the issue is I bet it's coming out of that speaker, wherever the hell that speaker's plugged in.
And it's coming. I think it's coming from your board with the.
Well, the board is totally independent. I changed the power source. Is that any better? 1, 2, little bit. All right, good enough.
running a little behind. Just waiting on the big man. Surprised for what? What are you surprised about? What color hair?
Well, we'd like to welcome everybody today here to Fort Dodge at the Old Bostons. We're very proud to have Governor Christie coming to town. My name is Jim Kirsten, and I've been working with and supporting Governor Christie since 2008 as a volunteer, and we really, really appreciate this huge crowd today. I have the honor of introducing Senator Tim Kreinbank, who will introduce the governor. Welcome.
Thanks, Senator Kirsten. I think once you're a senator, you're always a senator, right? I'd just like to take a second just to tell you how important this is. We've got the opportunity to have the first caucus here in the state of Iowa, to be first in the nation. I know I saw some students and some adults coming in from out of state. Where are you at? Let's hear a little bit of a cheer. I think you guys are from
Chicago, DC.
Indiana. So it just kind of shows us as Iowans what we need to be proud of, because these young adults are coming to our state to experience the caucus. And it shows you how important it is that we all get out and caucus a couple weeks from Monday. It's so important that we get this done so that we can keep it here in Iowa, and I think that's important for us as a state to be the first in the nation. Also, I've had the opportunity to talk with Governor Christie privately. Also talked with him on the phone a couple times. He calls at the best times, and we play telephone tag back and forth. First of all, I just want to tell you how good a man Governor Christie is, and I think that is obvious in how he's run his state through the disasters that they've had up there in the past. And I know he gets a bad time for hugging Barack Obama, but we'll let him off that. The main thing is, though, we need to have a Republican in the White House. We absolutely need a Republican in the White House, and this time it's my pleasure to introduce to you Governor Chris Christie.
Well, thank you all for being here. You know, it's interesting. I was getting interviewed by a member of the press last week or earlier, I guess it was, it's this past week, right before the debate, when I was in Charleston. A member of the press said, is it true that in Iowa and New Hampshire that you have town hall meetings in bars? And I said, yes, it is. I said, I have found that when I have these town hall meetings in bars, when people are drinking, I get smarter and more charming as the town hall meeting goes on. So please, tip your waiters and waitresses and enjoy the afternoon. I want to thank the senator for being here and his wife. I want to thank Jim for his introduction. Thank all of you for taking time today to be with me. It is really important that Iowa remain the first caucus in the nation and that New Hampshire remain the first primary in the nation. And here's why. Because all of you give every candidate a chance. If we have some type of big old national primary, well, then all that's going to matter is who raises the most money to put the most commercials on TV, who's got the fastest private jet to get to the most places in the most time, and all you'll see is a bunch of rallies and airport hangars, and you won't get to see candidates up close. You won't get to look them in the eye and ask them questions like you're going to ask me today when you're trying to make your decision about who's going to be the next president of the United States. What Iowa and New Hampshire do so well for the rest of the country is the service of winnowing the field. And we started off with 17 candidates in this race. We're down to 12 now. The fact is, by the time Iowa and New Hampshire get done, we'll be down to 4 or 5, I suspect. And so your responsibility is an enormous one. But what I tell people is remain calm and feel good about it, because the people of Iowa and the people of New Hampshire take it seriously. And the fact that we have all of you here today on a Saturday afternoon in less than balmy weather is a testimony to that. And so I'm thrilled to be here and to talk to you. I'm just going to talk about one or two things very quickly off the top, and we will take the rest of our time together this afternoon for you to ask me questions or for me to answer them. That's what I like to do the most, and I suspect that's what you're here to do. We hear reports now that the Americans who are being held in Iran have been released, and that they've been the subject of a swap of folks here in the United States who have been swapped back to Iran for our folks. Well, first, we have to say thank God for the fact that those people have been returned and from what we understand, returned safely to their families. Those families have suffered, as have those people who have been held by the Iranians. And so giving a little prayer tonight for those families and those released hostages is the right thing for us to do as Americans and something we should be grateful for. What I'm concerned about is, what did he trade? This guy, I wouldn't let him negotiate buying a car for me, let alone negotiate nuclear deals with Iran and trade deals with the Pacific and climate deals in Paris, and now the exchange of hostages with Iran. What we do know about Iran is that they have no respect for this president, not a lick of respect for him. You've watched them walk all over him in this Iranian nuclear deal, sign it, and then do ballistic missile testing right afterwards. You've seen them take 2 ships of ours that strayed accidentally into their waters and held our sailors hostage, released pictures and videos of them on their knees with guns pointed at them on the day of the President's State of the Union address. And now they should have never had been holding our citizens to start. What they were doing was illegal, and the idea that we'd have to trade anything to the Iranians to get our people home is a disgrace. I want you to remember, for those of you in this room who are old enough, and there are a few, like me, who are old enough to remember 1979 and 1980, when the Iranians took our hostages out of our embassy in Tehran and held them for 444 days. Those hostages were taken while we had a weak, indecisive president who was walked all over by people in the world, Jimmy Carter. And now these folks were taken and our sailors were detained during a time when we have a weak, indecisive president in Barack Obama. And what happened in January of 1981 was those hostages were released on the very day that Ronald Reagan took the oath of office. And I think it was no coincidence that they released them right then, because they knew that when Ronald Reagan was the president, that if they kept those hostages even for a few more days, that they very well could be subject to military attack by the United States. And like a hot potato, they got rid of those hostages as soon as Ronald Reagan took his hand off the Bible. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to have a president once again that the world respects the way they respected President Reagan and will respect America the way they did back then. And the only way that's going to happen is if we get a strong, decisive, no-nonsense person sitting back in the Oval Office again. And you'll hear lots of people in these last couple of weeks before the caucuses say lots of different things about me, but I guarantee you one thing they will not say is that I'm misunderstood. I speak my mind, and I'm fairly plain spoken. And as President of the United States, our allies would know that my word was good, and our adversaries would know the limits of American patience. And the Iranians have violated American patience over and over again just in the last few weeks. And we have a president who does nothing about it and wonders why it continues to happen. He signs the missile deal, he signs the nuclear deal rather. They test missiles, he does nothing about it. Do you think it's a coincidence that after that, they then also take our sailors? Do you think it's a coincidence that after we do nothing about that, that they then demand people to be given to them in return for hostages that they're holding illegally? It's no coincidence. This is like the kid whose lunch money gets stolen every day. The bully will continue to steal the kid's lunch money before the kid punches back. And then when he punches back, the lunch money stops getting stolen. America needs to stop allowing ourselves to be walked on by the mullahs in Iran, by Putin in Russia. We have to stop that. And we need a president who's willing to stop it. And I will be the president who will be willing to stop that. I will guarantee you that. Secondly, we've had a tough couple of weeks here in the stock market. Really tough couple of weeks in the stock market. And I've been saying all along during this campaign that the reason I wanted the Fed to raise interest rates, the reason why I wanted us to get realistic about what we were doing was I said, you know, we very well, because we felt that the recovery from the recession has been so weak, we feel like, well, we really haven't had a recovery yet, so how could we have another recession? Well, this recovery from the recession has been going on for 6 years. And in the cycles of the economy, we very well could be looking at another recession. And what tools do we have in the toolbox to do anything about it? Interest rates are at just about at zero. What would we do if we had another problem like 2008? And this has been the irresponsible stewardship of this president, who's added more debt to the nation's ledger than all of his predecessors combined. Barack Obama has run up more debt than every president from George Washington to George W. Bush. It's outrageous. He's added entitlements, he's overregulated, he's overtaxed, and he wonders why the American economy is not growing at a higher rate. It's because this government has thrown a wet blanket on small business owners all over this country with everything from Obamacare to Dodd-Frank banking regulation to the EPA and everything in between. We need a president once again who understands that the power of the American economy lies with the American people. They should be determining who the winners and losers are in our economy. They should be determining based upon their ingenuity and the depth of your work ethic. Not who some bureaucrat picks in Washington, D.C. should get this tax break or this economic incentive, this pile of money taken from this person and given to that person. And believe me, if you listen to Hillary Clinton, she will be exactly that type of president, but even worse. She talks about paid family leave and increased minimum wage, everything coming from the government, rather than our growth and our excellence coming from the people. We need a president who will change that entire mindset. And I absolutely believe But the only way the American economy gets better, grows stronger, and provides not only more opportunities for people, but more income for those who already have an opportunity, is if we let you make those decisions. Let you keep more of your own money. Strip this tax code down to just 2 deductions. That's it. Home mortgage deduction and the charitable contribution deduction. Because if you think the tax code is rigged for the rich, you know why you think that? Because it is. It is. And we've got to stop it. And we can do that, strip out all of these special interest loopholes and deductions that get put in by the lobbyists and the accountants and the lawyers in Washington, D.C., bring it down to just those 2 and lower rates to where they were when Ronald Reagan was president, and then everybody's going to pay their fair share. And you're going to get wealthy people who come up with these special ways to avoid paying taxes. Deduct your home mortgage interest, deduct your charitable contributions, and that's it. Then pay your tax. Not only that, but we get to fire a whole bunch of IRS agents, which would be a lot of fun. So we need to be sure that we understand that these bad couple of weeks from the stock market can be a harbinger of more difficult times to come if we still have a top-down economy where the government's making these decisions and not the people of our country. Do you know right now it costs any small business in America, this is from Obama's Small Business Administration, an average of $10,000 per employee to comply with regulation. And if you're a manufacturer, it costs you $34,000 per employee to comply with regulation. It's outrageous. And it is the biggest reason we're not growing more jobs, and that those jobs that we do have aren't paying higher salaries, because we're paying all this money to the government or to comply with the rules that the government puts in place. First executive order I signed as governor of New Jersey was to freeze any new regulation from any department or agency of government for 90 days. And I sent my lieutenant governor out around the state to hold open public meetings with business owners, and I asked Democrats in the legislature to go with her so they could hear it themselves about what business people were complaining about. I told the business folks, come with the list of regulations that you hate the most, the ones that cost you the most money, the ones that drive you the most crazy. And at the end of our first year as governor, we had gotten rid of 1/3 of all the regulation put in place by our predecessor. That's the kind of thing we need to do as president, too. So we have work to do. But I am not shying away from the hard work that needs to be done for this country. And remember this, if you get depressed about this, a president got us in this mess, which means a president can get us out of this mess. There's no reason to believe that because Barack Obama messed this up, that for any reason this has to be permanent. Leadership, strong leadership from a president can make this happen on the good side once again. But we need to get to it. Good news is we only got a year and a couple of days left with Barack Obama as the President of the United States. So the clock is ticking, everybody. The light is at the end of the tunnel. So I'm going to take your questions now. Listen, there's only one rule for my town halls in Iowa. One rule. You raise your hand, I answer your questions. Now, just so you know, in New Jersey, I have 4 rules for my town hall meetings. I've done 134 town hall meetings as governor of New Jersey, and I have 4 rules. But you people in Iowa are so nice and polite that you only need 1 rule. In New Jersey, we need 4 rules to control the crowds. So the one rule is this: you raise your hand and I call on you. Ask me whatever you want about whatever topic is on your mind, and you will get a direct answer back. I cannot guarantee you will like the answer. That is not my job. My job is not to please you. My job is to inform you of what my positions are, so that when you go to caucus 2 weeks from Monday, you can go knowing exactly what kind of president I will be if you give me the chance to do it. So raise them up. I'm happy to take your questions. Let's start with this young man right here.
Thank you for taking my question. My name is Jensen Cooper. I'm 11 years old and I'm interested in politics. And I'd like to know specifically, how are you going to make our nation's healthcare better?
Well, thank you for your question. How am I going to make the nation's healthcare better? Well, it's 2 things, right? It's how we provide the healthcare and how we pay for it. So let's start with how we pay for it. We got to get rid of Obamacare. And the way I'd replace it is this way. And this will tell you a lot about what my governing philosophy will be on most issues. I would repeal Obamacare and I would give every state in the union 1 year to implement their own plan for their own state. See, I think that government should be closest to the people. And there is no way, look at our two states, Iowa and New Jersey. Now, Iowa's a much larger state geographically, but New Jersey has more people. We've got 8.9 million people stuffed into this little space right in there, you know? And the fact is that how would you ever think that a state like Iowa and a state like New Jersey could have one type of approach to health care and that it would work for everybody? There's no chance it will. The problems that you face in Iowa regarding delivery of health care are much different than the ones we face in New Jersey. So I trust the governors and the state legislatures to come up with a plan that works for Iowa. Let's have an Iowa healthcare system that Iowans decide how private insurance is bought. Can it be bought over state lines or not? How do you deal with people with pre-existing conditions? How do you deal with folks who wind up wanting to carry their insurance from one job to another? How do you deal with college students who aren't getting a job right away? Can they go back on their parents' plan? How do you deal with hospitals and the way hospitals are reimbursed? That should be determined on a state-by-state basis. And the reason for that is twofold. First, it'll work better because you'll have greater input into it. You know, you can go and see the senator and talk to him and tell him the issues that are a problem for you and your healthcare system, and he can then bring those to the state capitol in Des Moines, argue for the things to be included in the plan that he thinks are most important to his constituents, the people he represents every day. And once a plan gets in place, if it's not working exactly the way it should, you can go back to him and say, I know you intended it to work this way, but here's the way it's affecting my business, my family. You can see him here. You can see him at the dry cleaners, at the deli, on the football field, wherever he is during his day. You're going to be able to go up to him, see him, talk to him. What chance do you have of influencing the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C., being able to ever even get a return phone call or letter from anybody there about your complaint? The best you'll probably get is a form letter back. So we need to have the states control this for practical reasons. Second is philosophical. I believe in the Constitution. In the Constitution of the United States, the 10th Amendment says if these powers are not reserved for the federal government in this document, they are returned to the states. I've read the Constitution. I don't see health care anywhere in the Constitution. This is a responsibility of the states, but a responsibility of the states. You can't punt. You can't say, no, we're not going to do anything. You got a year to do something. In a year, a state legislature can do anything they want to do in conjunction with a governor. I see them do it in a week when they're really motivated. So they can do it if you give them a year. So that's the way I would deal with that part of it. The second part is I think we have to start thinking about paying for health care differently than we pay for it now. Generally, the way health care gets paid for now is on what's called a fee-for-service basis, right? So they perform a service, they get a particular fee for that service. What that encourages, along with an absolutely out-of-control legal system that allows for lawsuits that are out of control, is for doctors to practice defensive medicine. They order lots of tests and lots of different things that they may not really think you need, but they know if they're going to get second-guessed later on by some lawyer and a judge, they're going to make sure they've given you every test. Well, every one of those tests costs something. In addition, fee-for-service, if you get paid a fee for every service you provide, for those who are not the most honest in the world, you're going to provide more services, whether they're really necessary or not, because you get more money for it. We should go to what places like the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic are doing now. They pay their physicians on an outcome basis. What's the outcome you provided to the patient? How good is the outcome? The better the outcome, the more you get paid. It incentivizes the right thing. It doesn't incentivize providing a test and multiple tests. It incentivizes the right tests, the right decisions, the right medication, the right treatment plan. And people get rewarded in that way. So the second piece of it is, if we want to try to control those costs, we should be paying for it in a different way. And I think the fee-for-service model is an old, antiquated model. We need to move towards the new model, which should be paying for results. I think those are two things that I would do to try to make the healthcare system in the country better. But to remember this, it's not like our healthcare system's so bad. You know, Canadian cancer patients still come to the United States to get their treatment. People from all over the world come to the United States to get the treatment from the best physicians and healthcare providers in the world. And so we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, everybody. And we don't want to fix a problem by creating 5 other ones. So let's be smart about it. Let's approach it the right way. Yes, sir, at the bar. I always love saying that. Like the guy at the bar.
Governor Christie, I spent 23 years in the military. It seems like we're sending our troops, our young men and women overseas all the time. But at the same time, it seems we're taking away their benefits, so we're not taking care of them. We're not keeping sea lanes open, as we're seeing these guys the other day. What are you going to do to make our military strong and take care of our veterans?
Well, let's talk about taking care of veterans first, and then we'll take care of the current day military folks. On the veteran side, what's happened at the VA system is an absolute disgrace. The lying to people, the delaying of the provision of treatment has been disgraceful, and it's cost lives. Not only folks who needed physical treatment, who were not taken care of in an appropriate amount of time to be able to make sure they could be taken care of, but even worse yet, are fighting men and women who come home with mental health issues and cannot get the treatment they need and wind up committing suicide. And we have a rash, as you know, of suicides in this nation by veterans, and it's disgraceful. So the first thing we need to do is to acknowledge that the VA system is broken. Hillary Clinton, I heard her say a couple weeks ago, there's no crisis at the VA. Well, it's pretty clear she's never tried to go and get health care at the VA, because if she did, believe me, she'd be yelling and screaming. We know her. There'd be a real crisis then. So while we're going to get that problem fixed, we need to say to every veteran in this country, you take your veterans card to any doctor or any hospital in this country and you get health care, and the United States people will pay for your health care, because that's what we promised you we would do. And they did not break the system. The government broke the system. So we need to have our veterans being taken care of now, not waiting for us to get this fixed. But we can't throw out the VA system. There is a lot of expertise in the VA system that is really good on everything from prosthetics to mental health treatment and everything in between. And a lot of really good people in the VA system who care deeply about caring for veterans, but they're just not being given the opportunity by management. So the way I would fix the VA system is, with all due respect to the admirals and generals, I would not hire another admiral or general to run the VA. The VA is now a hospital system. That's what it is. And so I would go to find whoever was the best hospital executive in America, and go to that person and appeal to their patriotism and say to them, listen, your country needs you for the next 2 years. Come and run the VA and get this system fixed. And we will give you whatever tools you need to fix this system and to run it like the great private hospitals are run throughout this country. That's what I would do to fix it, not put another military person in charge who, quite frankly, doesn't have the expertise to fix the problems that we have right now, and maybe too invested in the organization to break the China that needs to be broken to fix this thing, given how bad off it is. Now, for our military, remember this. We have the smallest active duty Army that we've had since 1940. 1940. We have the smallest Navy we've had since World War I. And the president also wants to cut the Air Force back significantly by as much as 50%. The problem with this, of course, is the rest of the world knows these numbers too. And it is, I believe, part of the reason why we're being pushed around the world. People know that we're overextended. We have folks in the military operating with hardware that is last generation hardware. And we're asking them to put their lives on the line with that hardware. It doesn't make sense. And lastly, on this point, the reason I'm for no fewer than a 500,000 person active duty soldier army, we're now at about 440,000. The reason why I'm for a 350 ship Navy, not the 260 ship Navy that we're looking at right now. The reason I'm for 2,600 coded aircraft ready to go in the Air Force is we have to not only raise our hardware, but we have to raise the number of people we have on active duty. Because what's happening, and you implied this in your question, is that more of our fighting men and women are being sent on more deployments for longer periods of time. And our National Guardsmen and women are being sent for more deployments for longer periods of time And it's not what they anticipated when they signed up. And it's having an effect on them, both physically and mentally. It's not fair. We have people who would be willing to stay and serve and increase our ranks, but the president's not providing the money to be able to do that. It's one of the reasons why, and I hope we'll talk about entitlements at some point today too, that we have to reorder the way we're spending money in the federal government, because we need to invest in our military and make ourselves stronger again, not to only make the world a safer place, but also to make it safer for our fighting men and women who put their lives on the line for us. So that's what I would do with both the military and Veterans Affairs. So thanks for raising the question. Go to the gentleman up on the stairs there.
Governor Christie,
Yes, sir.
if I could, I don't want to make it a one-issue question here, but I'd like to go back to the youngster that asked the first question about healthcare.
Yes.
I like the idea of having the states do it because New Jersey is different than Iowa. My brother that used to live in Iowa, where I do, is now living in New Jersey. So people move around. What about the mobility of that, and how is that going to transfer?
Listen, I think, as I said, one of the things that I said in the list of things that I put on was, what about the portability of health care? I think every state should determine about whether health care should be portable. But I think given today's economy, it doesn't make any sense not to have it be portable. People do not go and work as they did. Like when my grandfather, was working, he started with a company, he stayed with that company for 30 years. That was the way it worked back then. But these days now, it's almost unheard of to hear someone stay with one employer for their entire career. So part of this is just common sense and adapting to the new world and the new workforce that we live in, which is, if you have a good health insurance plan with one, why not be able to take that and go to your next employer? Or maybe if you decide to self-employ, to take it with you. Start your own business. Whatever you decide to do, if you like that health care plan, unlike what the president said when he said, if you like your plan, you can keep it, we actually would like to make that truthful rather than what the president did with it. And so I absolutely believe it's an important part of it. It was one I would advocate for in New Jersey. But I would tell you that I think, again, these are things that need to be determined on a state-by-state basis. And let the states determine what they should do. The more direction you get from Washington, I guarantee you the more this will get messed up. It's by definition, that's what will happen. I would much rather leave this in the hands of folks like Senator Kreinbrink and Governor Branstad than in the hands of Kathleen Sebelius and Barack Obama. Be much better off having it happen here in Iowa. You all would be healthier, happier, and have more money in your pocket, I suspect, if they got to make those choices. So that's what I would do. Right over there on the balcony.
When President Obama just signed an executive order to release sanctions on Iran, what more will you do to Iran than just get rid of the nuclear deal?
I would say three things in my first week as president about Iran. The first thing I would say is that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon on my watch, no matter what. And if I had to use military action to stop it, I would. They cannot get a nuclear weapon. They are a destructive force in this world, and we cannot allow them to become a nuclear power. Secondly, I would say to them, not only are we not going to have any further agreements, we won't even have any further discussions with you unless and until you publicly state that Israel has a right to exist. It is outrageous that the Iranian mullahs say that they will wipe Israel off the map. This is not what a civilized regime does. They don't have to have diplomatic relations with Israel, but they cannot be saying that Israel does not have the right to exist. And third, I would say that the policy of the United States should be that that is an illegitimate regime in Tehran, and we should be for regime change. Now, that doesn't mean we should send armies over there to try to get them out of office, but we should be sending a very strong signal who are discontent.
More, if necessary, we shut down the government and close it down till we get a balanced budget in place.
You know, here's the thing about shutting down the government. Shutting down the government, by definition, is a failure. You're sent there to govern, and then you don't. What I think we need to do is not have a president threaten things like that, but have a president, once again, restore order to the city in terms of the way the natural budget system works. And listen, what happened this year, just a couple of months ago, with this Republican Congress that approved this budget through the fall of 2016, and in that budget stole $150 billion from the Social Security Retirement Fund and put it in the Social Security Disability Fund, which is going bankrupt because we're letting many too many people on disability who aren't working, who could be working, and they take that from the retirement fund instead of fixing the underlying disability fund. So I think that I half agree with you. I think the new president has to impose certain discipline with the veto pen and making sure that you say no to folks on things that they want to do. That's the old way of doing business. Whether or not you shut the government or not is going to be a tough decision at that moment. You better make sure you got a plan. Because when we shut the government down the last time in 2013, we had no plan. And we got wiped out politically because of it. We lost the governorship in Virginia, I'm convinced. I was running at the same time in New Jersey for re-election. And I'm convinced we lost the governorship in Virginia because we closed down the government. And people had no idea of what victory would look like. Basically, we closed down the government the last time. We said, if we close down the government, he'll repeal Obamacare. I mean, the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why is someone named Barack Obama going to actually repeal something that's named after him? I mean, it's just not going to happen. It was never going to happen. And that was Senator Cruz's brainchild. So, you know, be careful about the folks who are in this race and them saying things to you that you want to hear, but that can't get done the right way. If you're going to close the government, you better have a plan about how you're going to win. How you're going to win politically. Because cashing in all those political chips and then not winning is destructive to our party, and we could wind up with a Democratic Congress again, which would be even worse. So what I would do is to say to them, to sit down with both sides of the aisle right in the beginning and say, let's get back to regular order. Let's have bills for each area and each department. Let's have hearings. Let's pass those bills. Let's have a conference where they get together and that the president has input into that, and let's do the budget the normal way. Let's stop this stopgap spending, these continuing resolutions and all the rest. Let's spend the time we need to spend. And we did this for decades. This has really just fallen apart in the last 10 years or so. And we need to do much better. It started really almost 20 years ago when Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich and Bob Dole were fighting. But they eventually came to resolution and wound up balancing the federal budget, reforming welfare, and doing some good things together, despite their disagreements. That's what happens when people get in a room and a president provides strong leadership, says what he'll put up with and what he won't put up with, and then crafts a deal with the members of Congress. What we're getting now is when people just stand in corners and yell at each other and yell out what they demand. And, you know, compromise has to be part of this if the government is divided. Now, hopefully, I'm going to have a Republican Congress and a Republican president, and that means there'll be still some division, but not nearly as much as there is now. But the president's got to be the one who gets people in the room and forces compromise, not stalemate. And I've done that now for 6 years in New Jersey. When the Democrats were completely in control in New Jersey, they closed the government. They had a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature, and they closed the government. You know why? Only New Jersey. They couldn't agree on how much to raise taxes. The legislature wanted to raise taxes a percentage higher than the governor did, and they closed the government over that. I've been governor for 6 years. We've never closed the government. We've had a balanced budget every year, and we have not had any tax increases at the state level in New Jersey in the 6 years I've been governor. Because I get people in the room, I tell them, here are the limits of what I'm willing to do and not do. Let's negotiate. Do I give them some things sometimes? Of course I do. Because I'm not the only person in town with principles. And other people who have principles got elected by the people. You guys elected them. So I got to deal with them. And I think that's the approach. You got to come in with a different mindset. And I think my experience as being a blue state governor helps because I realize that you can't just dictate. You're not a dictator. You're a president or a governor. You got to sit down with people and make things work. And we haven't done that. Would I say to you I would never, ever close down the government under any circumstances? No. And by the way, you should never take that off the table. Then you weaken yourself from a negotiating perspective. I'm not Barack Obama. I'm actually a good negotiator. I know how to negotiate. And so that's the way I would approach it. Yeah, not back there.
Department of Ed, financial aid programs and student loan debt.
Yes.
In your opinion, what's wrong with it? What would you do?
Few things. First off, you know, the fact that students are not permitted to refinance their loans is outrageous. They get charged a higher interest rate and their families get charged a higher interest rate. They could go to a private bank and refinance them. And by law, you're not allowed to do it. It's outrageous. It's costing them more money, and it's not fair to them. Secondly, I think we should be giving our students an opportunity at national service to pay down some of their debt. Not just military service, but a broader national service that allows them to contribute to their communities, to their state, and to their country, and to get credit on those student loans for serving years in national service. But that's not the only way to fix the problem, right? Because part of the problem is the expense, is the cost in the first place. So, for instance, we have 2 children in college right now. We have a senior at Princeton. We have a sophomore at Notre Dame. Is there anybody in here who really hates Duke? Right? Right? Some people, I ask the hate thing first. Anybody who really hates Duke? For anybody, because I know there are a lot of people who don't like Duke. I saw something on ESPN the other night about people who hate Christian Laettner and hate Duke or whatever. But for those of you who hate Duke, my daughter is one of the student managers at the University of Notre Dame men's basketball team. And as I was coming in here today, the Notre Dame basketball team went to Duke and beat Duke at Duke. So my daughter's in a great mood right now. She's very, very happy. She and the guys on the team, I'm sure, are really happy. So she's at Notre Dame. I got a letter this summer from the president of the University of Notre Dame to my wife and I. All the parents did. And it said something like this. First paragraph's from Father John Jenkins. He's the president of Notre Dame. And it said something to the effect of, "We want to thank you for the blessing you've bestowed upon us by entrusting the souls of your children to our care for their education over the next number of years." Now, after that first paragraph from a priest, right, you close your eyes, you can hear the theme from Rudy in the background, right? Right? You can see touchdown Jesus and the Golden Dome. Your heart is pounding, right? It's amazing. Now, for any of you in this room who are Catholics, you know when a priest gives you a paragraph like that, what the next paragraph is. It's the money paragraph, man. Because they know how to separate you from your money better than anybody. Of course, the next paragraph says, that's why we're so pleased to tell you, that tuition at the University of Notre Dame this year is only increasing 3.9%. Now, this is in a 1% inflation world, everybody, right? But here's the kicker. The next line is, and that's the lowest annual tuition increase at Notre Dame in 40 years. Total student cost at Notre Dame this year is $62,500. Yeah, exactly. That's what I did. It's exactly what I did when that happened. Now, here's the problem, right? The problem is, let's say we made the decision about college for our children in exactly the same way we make all other decisions about the way we spend money. We look at, is what we're being charged, are we getting a value in return that's roughly equivalent? Imagine this. Imagine, my daughter's 19. Imagine if after I got that letter, I called her downstairs. I said, sit down with Mom and I for a minute. We need to have a talk with you. We know you love Notre Dame. We know you're the manager of the basketball team. We know you love the football games. We know you love your classes and all the rest. But you know what? It's not a value for us anymore. So we're going to send you to fill-in-the-blank school that's less expensive. I don't know about you, but I pretty much can anticipate what happened after that. After the crying and the stamping of the feet and the slamming of the door and her saying, "You're ruining my life," right? You know what's going to happen. Mary Pat and I are going to sit around that table and try to figure out any way we can to make sure we send her back. Here's the problem. The colleges know it too. They know that you're not making this choice based purely on rationality. They know there's emotion involved. And they play on that emotion and drive up costs, which they know you're going to just either borrow money from somewhere to pay. You're going to make it happen because what you want is for your child to get the best education they can at a place where they're the happiest. So we've got to try to figure out a way to put market forces on those prices because they're out of control. So here are 2 ideas that I have. The first one is we need to make them explain to us everything they're spending our money on. Now imagine if you came here and you ordered some food and there were 4 of you at a table and then the check came at the end and you flipped it over and it said food, $50. That's all it said. You'd call the waiter over, right, and say, "Excuse me, could you write down here exactly what we got and how much each item was, and then I'd be happy to pay the bill?" I just paid the bill at Princeton for my oldest son. It's 3 lines. It says tuition, room and board, other fees. Like $29,000 for the semester. And I sent the check, right? I didn't say to somebody, how do you get to that number? What's made up? What are you spending this money on? Right? What is all this? We accept it. We shouldn't. We should demand, and here's why it's important. Because if we knew what they were spending the money on, if they had a detail to us, they'd be embarrassed. I made this joke when I was here at Iowa State back in the summer. I asked the folks at Iowa State, I had a bunch of students there, I said, do you guys have a rock climbing wall at Iowa State? And they said, oh yeah, sure, we have a rock climbing wall. I said, oh good, rock climbing wall, great. There's one at Notre Dame too. My daughter, there's actually two of them. She doesn't climb on any of them, and I know my daughter, she's 4 years, she'll never climb on any of the rock climbing walls. And I said, isn't it a little bit ridiculous that we're building rock climbing walls? Now, it's a small example, but it's a powerful one. Because then I went to New Hampshire, to the University of New Hampshire, and I asked at the University of New Hampshire, do you have a rock climbing wall? They said, yes. I said, you have rocks. I mean, you're the granite state. There are rocks everywhere. Go outside and climb the rocks if you want to climb the rocks. Why are we building rock climbing walls? It would be like if the University of Iowa had an artificial cornfield. Right? I mean, so you can experience what it would be like to walk through a cornfield. Go outside and find a cornfield. They're everywhere. Right? But here's the thing. We don't say no to anything. Now, the press had fun with that because they said, when I said this at Iowa State, they said, Christie's assault on college fitness. Now, look at me, okay? I have assaulted fitness in many ways over my life. This is not one of them, okay? This is not an assault on fitness, this is an assault on common sense. They need to detail those things for us. And the second part, the companion to that is, you need to be able to unbundle your bill. You should only pay for the things that your child is going to use. And if they're not using the rock climbing wall, don't check the box and you're not paying for it. And all the other things that they have there, the next 3 science buildings that are a monument to somebody's ego who donated money that maybe they need or maybe they don't. The 44 vice presidents for paperwork. I mean, all the things that happen, the waste at colleges and universities is disgraceful. And here's the way you get it done. You say to them, if you don't disclose everything to us and you don't allow us to unbundle the bills, then you cannot participate in the federal student loan program or the grant program. That get their attention really quickly. And hopefully then would be used to try to keep market pressure on something that because of our emotion, we don't put market pressure on. That's the 2 ways I think you get prices more controlled and you make it easier for folks to be able to pay back those loans, both in terms of the amount they have to pay and a national service option to get it back. There's no perfect way to do this, but I think those 4 ideas are ways that we can deal with a problem that's getting bigger and bigger all the time of student debt. And what you're doing is you're hurting this generation's ability to be able to go out and buy a home, be able to go buy a car, get married, and pick the career of their choice. Because they have golden handcuffs on them from the time they get out of college. Those handcuffs of the loans, and they need to make a certain amount of money to pay them back. And we got to stop that with our next generation. We're going to really limit them. So those are 4 ideas on how to deal with that issue. And thank you for your question. What's that? How about it? I'm so glad you asked. She got it out there already. How about entitlements? Did you watch the debate Thursday night? Part of it, okay. Maria Bartiromo directly asked Senator Rubio about what he would do about entitlements. And he answered about tax reform. And then Senator Cruz interrupted Senator Rubio on the question on entitlements and gave his answer on tax reform. And then Senator Rubio went back at Senator Cruz about what's wrong with Senator Cruz's position on tax reform. Now, I was standing there right next to Senator Rubio, and I'm thinking to myself, did I miss something? Like, was I daydreaming for a minute, and was there actually a tax reform question here? I could have sworn that she asked about entitlements. And so I interrupted. I said, can I please interrupt this debate on the floor of the United States Senate for a moment and actually answer the question that was asked about entitlements? Because the reason they don't ask is because it's hard. They don't answer that question because it's too hard. And by the way, neither Senator Cruz nor Senator Rubio have an entitlement reform plan. I'm the only candidate in the race who was put forward, and I put it forward in April of last year, an entitlement reform plan. And here's why. 71 cents of every federal dollar that's spent today is spent on entitlements and debt service. 71 cents of every dollar. And to give you perspective on where that was 55 years ago when Jack Kennedy was sworn in as president, it was 26 cents. So we have completely reversed. Why did America grow and prosper during those years? In part, it was because we were investing in the future. Now, we're taking nearly 3/4 of every dollar we spend and investing in the rearview mirror and not in the future. And so we need to deal with this problem. When I told my staff that I wanted to start off the campaign by talking about entitlement reform, they told me I was nuts. And everyone says this is the third rail of American politics. You're not supposed to talk about it. Well, hell with that. I'm talking about it. And here's why. Because it's like what Willie Sutton said when they asked him why he robs banks. He says, because where the money is. Right? And in the federal budget, it's where the money is. So you want to deal with the long-term debt? You want to deal with the solvency of Social Security and Medicare? Then you better have a plan. So I'm going to go through 4 points of a 12-point plan, because I went through 12 points of the 12-point plan. You'd be ordering another drink, without any doubt. But go on my website at chrischristie.com. All 12 points are there. It's scored by the Congressional Budget Office, and our plan will save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. Not guesswork, scored by the Congressional Budget Office. But here's 4 points, 2 on Social Security, 2 on Medicare, which are the 2 programs that people seem to ask about the most. On Social Security, the first thing we need to do is raise the retirement age from 67 to 69. And we phase it in over 25 years. So it goes up 1 month a year, every year for 25 years. So for people who are on Social Security now, it doesn't affect you. For people who are close to Social Security, it will affect you by a couple of months, but no more than that. So in the fall, when I'm running against Hillary Clinton and she says that my Social Security plan throws grandma off the cliff, I just want you to remember that that cliff takes 25 years to fall off. That's a high cliff. So it's 25 years. Here's why. The reason we have to do it is a blessing. We're all living longer. The average life expectancy of a woman in America now is 83 years old. The average life expectancy of a man is 79. And so these programs were developed for people when they died in their mid-60s. We can't do it anymore, so we need to raise the retirement age. Second piece is we need to means test Social Security. Now, I understand that this is a controversial idea, but here's the fact. We're spending more money than we're taking in, and it's only going to get worse. So when you're spending more money than you're taking in, whether it's the Social Security program or whether it's your checkbook at home, there's only 2 options, right? You either got to spend less or you got to bring in more. Well, here's my question. Hillary Clinton will advocate, and Bernie Sanders has already advocated, for higher Social Security taxes. Why would you give more money to the very people who lied to you and stole from you in this fund already? Because all that's in the trust fund are IOUs. They already stole the money and spent it. This would be like if someone opened a new bank up here in Fort Dodge, and a bunch of you went and put your money in that bank. And then a year or 2 later, the bank went belly up, and you lost some of your money. And then 6 months later, you got a knock on your front door. And it was the same guy who opened the bank. And he said, hey, by the way, I'm opening up a new bank. You say, wait a second, aren't you the guy whose bank went belly up and I lost my money? They go, yeah, but I learned my lesson. So give me your money this time. I don't care how nice people in Iowa are, and you're nice. That guy's not leaving your front porch with any of your money. I know he's not. Why is a different rule applied to the government? Hillary Clinton wants to take more of your money to fix this problem. I say let's spend less of your money to fix the problem. So the way I would mean test it is this. If you make over $200,000 a year in retirement income, this means you have retired, and from the investments that you have, it throws off $200,000 or more, whether it's pensions or private investments, you don't get a Social Security check. And here's why. You don't need it. If you're making $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, you are not going to have your lifestyle changed one bit by getting that extra check. Now, I understand the argument. You put your money in, you paid for it, you want your money back. I'm sorry, they stole it. And I'd love to have a different solution for you. And Hillary has one. She'll take more of your money now to fix the problem for later. I say don't trust the government with any more of your money on Social Security. Don't do it. Don't allow them to take the cap off the Social Security tax. We're all trying to get the same people. She'll say, well, the wealthy should pay more. I'm saying I don't want the wealthy to pay more. I want them to get less at the back end. And this way, I don't have to trust you as the middleman. with my money, thank you very much. And that's why means testing is important, because we had this argument on the debate stage. It's only been asked 3 times in 6 debates. And the first 2 times I got asked, because I'm the only one with a plan, the first time they said, well, you and Governor Huckabee disagree. And I like Mike a lot, but when they went to Mike, he said, this is terrible, and the people shouldn't have to pay for this problem. Like, okay, well, who's going to then? Like, this sounds like my mother when I was growing up, and I'd go to the store with her, and I'd ask for something. And I said, Mom, can we buy this? And she said, oh, sure, Chris, of course we can. Great, I'm so glad I came to the store today. I get to get something that my brother and sister aren't getting. Because she goes, yeah, go home, go in the backyard, pick the money off the money tree, and then bring that money here, and you can buy it. I said, Mom, we don't have a money tree. She's like, exactly, right? So I don't know whether Huckabee thinks there's like a magic money tree someplace, but here's what he suggested, and I swear to you, go back and look at the tape. It's true. I never thought I'd hear this on a stage for a presidential debate, but Huckabee said he was going to pass a tax plan that was going to make sure Social Security got more money because the pimps and prostitutes were going to pay taxes. I stood on the stage, I was like, wow, I didn't know what running for president was going to be like. This was the first debate. I'm like, we're actually talking pimps and prostitutes on national television. And listen, I've been to 49 of the 50 states in the last 18 months. Only Alaska is unscathed. And I've watched what's going on there. I can guarantee you there are not enough pimps and prostitutes in America operating to fix this problem. Then, in the second debate, they asked it for me and Donald Trump. They said, Donald Trump disagrees with you on this issue. Okay. So he said, Donald Trump, how are you going to fix the problem? And he said, because when I'm president, so many more people are going to be so richer. They're going to be rich, rich, rich. And we're not going to worry about Social Security anymore because everyone's going to be rich. Okay. Hard to argue with that one, I guess. But I don't think that in your life experience, that's a real solution to the problem, right? So I said back to Donald, I said, well, Donald, I'm saying that people who are as rich as you shouldn't get Social Security. How do you feel about that? And he said, okay, I won't take Social Security. I said, okay, that's a good start. Donald's not taking Social Security. Let's start asking more people. We need to do this. And we need to do the same thing on Medicare. Increase the eligibility age 2 years, phase it in over 25. And for people who make over $200,000 a year in retirement, instead of subsidizing your Medicare premium 75%, which is what we do now, I'd subsidize it 10%. So you still get some subsidy, but not nearly as much. Why? Because you can afford to pay for more. And I don't want Medicare and Social Security to be taken away from people who it makes the difference between rent and heat and food. If we have to make this choice, I wish we didn't, but we do because of our past misconduct. If we have to make the choice, let's take care of the people who need it the most, who worked hard, played by the rules, paid into the system, and have no other way to survive. We need to save those people. So I have other ideas on the website about Social Security disability insurance, which are really important, and Medicaid, which is really important, and I urge you to go and look at them. And then go to everyone else's website and look for their entitlement plan. It'll take you 5 minutes because they're not there. And how is it that you can run for President of the United States when 71 cents of every dollar is being spent on entitlements and debt service and have no plan? Here's what's going to happen. They'll do nothing about it. They'll do nothing about it. And Harvard and Dartmouth just came out with a study that said Social Security will be insolvent in 7 to 8 years if we do nothing. That's an unacceptable alternative. That's why we have to do what we have to do. It will be tough. Lots of people won't like it, but I'm not running for prom king. I'm running for president. I'm not worried about being popular. I'm worried about being effective and being a good president for all of you, and that's the way I'll deal with entitlements. All right.
A majority of Republican primary voters, I think, don't like Donald Trump, don't think he's conservative. But right now, all of his competitors are fighting amongst each other, ensuring that he's going to win with a plurality of about 30%. So what is your plan to defeat Donald Trump for the nomination?
Well, defeat all those other people first. That's the first part of the plan. Listen, there's a lot of people running. You're right. And I don't think your political analysis is incorrect, although I'm not so sure that he wins with a plurality. That's what the polls say right now. You all get to make that decision on February 1st. You all get to decide. Don't be governed by what the polls tell you to do or who you think is winning or not. Pick the person you think is the best person to be president. This field will winnow out and get smaller, just by practical matter. Depending on how people do in Iowa and New Hampshire, if you don't do well in those places, you're going home. And I don't care whether your name is Chris Christie or Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or John Kasich or Mike Huckabee. Doesn't matter. If you don't do well in either of these two states, you're going home. And this will get a lot smaller. And then the concern that you have will be eliminated because you won't be dividing the vote up by as many folks. And the more the scrutiny gets, the more candidates are going to have to be asked to perform. And to answer the question, how? See, everybody can say anything they want. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You all have to ask the follow-up question, how? How? I just talked to this lady about entitlements. I told her exactly how. Not like I'm going to, tax pimps and prostitutes. Not everyone's going to get rich, so you don't have to worry about it. And if everybody's going to get rich, how? Just show me how. Tell me how. And I think we're going to get to that part of the campaign. As it gets smaller, it's easier to get to that part of the campaign. There's more time in these debates. There's more focus on each of the candidates who remains because the reporters and others who are covering them have more time. They don't have to spread it out among 12 different people, but only 4 or 5 perhaps. And the scrutiny will get a lot hotter and heavier, and the people who really know what they're talking about and are serious and know what they're doing will get more attention. And the ones who are not serious and don't know what they're doing will get more attention. And I think the voters will hear that. But see, part of the responsibility is on you, as I said in the beginning. You've been hearing from all of us for a year. A year. And you know what's real and what isn't. Don't just vote out of anger and frustration. Anger and frustration are absolutely deserved emotions. But then you have to ask yourself, how do I fix that anger and frustration so I don't feel it anymore? The act of just voting will not do that. The person you vote for must then do things that will relieve your anger and frustration and know how to do it. And so when you all are going to vote, think about that. It's all well and good to vote for somebody who says exactly what you want to hear, but they better be able to also tell you how they're going to take what they said and put it into action. Because if you don't, we'll just have another failed presidency. Because we had a guy who was for hope and change. And man, who's against hope and change? A lot of us now. But back then, hope and change, hope and change, hope and change. How fabulous. Never seen anybody read a teleprompter better in my entire life. More charming, right? Hope and change. But no one, yeah, you are hoping for change. I know you are. But we've gone through this now. So let's not make the same mistake. Let's not vote for somebody who just gives a good speech, but doesn't have any record to show you that he actually will be able to do it. Let's not make the same mistake again. I'm going to be very direct about this. We've elected a first-term senator president just 7 years ago, a guy who had no more experience than running a 30-person Senate staff. And we put him in charge of the most complex government the world's ever known, and we're wondering why it ain't going well. Well, man, you wouldn't have put him in charge of your small business. But we put him in charge of the biggest government in the world. Here's the difference. Don't think it makes a difference if you philosophically agree with that person. Let's put aside our philosophical disagreement with Barack Obama or our philosophical agreement with some of the senators, first-term senators who are running this time. Let's put that aside for a second. What's the difference then? On being able to actually do the job. Sit in the chair and do the job. When I get there and I sit in that chair for the first time, I'm not going to spin around on it and go, gee whiz, isn't it cool I'm president? Okay, I'm going to sit in that chair the first time and say, you know what, this chair feels familiar. It's not exactly the chair I sat in before, but it's a lot like it. And I know what decisions come in that door and how hard they are. And I know how to make those decisions because I've been doing it for 13 years as the chief federal prosecutor in my state and then as the governor. And it's not going to be new to me to put together a cabinet. It's not going to be new to me to put together a senior staff. It's not going to be new to me to make those decisions on a day-to-day basis. We need to get serious about this and really think about it. In the end, you decide you want to vote for Donald Trump, vote for Donald Trump. I mean, it's your call. But the fact is that you got to answer that question as to how. You want to vote for a first-term United States Senator again after watching the last 7 years with a ringside seat? Okay. But don't expect a different result. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. You look back on who the great presidents have been over the course of time. And in the main, they have been experienced governors. Ronald Reagan governed for 2 terms one of the most complex and difficult states in this country. He was ready to be a great president. Agree or disagree with Franklin Roosevelt, but he was certainly one of our most consequential presidents. And where did he come from? He was governor of New York, one of the most difficult and complex states to govern even back then. Teddy Roosevelt, where did he come from? He was the governor of New York, became vice president, and then president. You go through the list of the great presidents, many, many of them, especially in the 20th century, had the experience of being governors. So all is not lost. It's up to you. We're counting on you. I'm counting on you to understand that argument and to move it forward. Let's not let the pundits make this determination, okay? Let's not let the pollsters make this determination. You'll make it on February 1st. Vote for the person you think is best. That's the way movements get started. No one thought Barack Obama was going to win here in 2008. Nobody. Hillary Clinton was unbeatable. Iowa changed the course of the entire country by having Barack Obama win the caucuses in 2008. The whole country changed because of what Iowa Democrats did. Let's have Iowa Republicans do exactly the same thing on February 1st and change the course of the country. Now, they tell me I can take one more question. That means I'm going to take 2. And here's why. I want to let my staff know I'm still the boss. Now, you think this is funny, right? But let me tell you what running for president is like, since I assume none of you in this room has done it. Running for president, this is what it's like. You are surrounded every day by people who are younger than you, and they tell you where to go and what to do every minute of the day. The only place that I am free from the tyranny of the young is when I'm standing by this stool in the middle of a room and I get to decide how many more questions. They say 1, I say 2. So I'm going to go to this lady first over here, because when I said only 1 more, she looked really disappointed. You were. And he's going to come right above you. Watch your head. There's a microphone coming at you. There you go.
The national news today was talking of another group of prisoners that were released in Guantanamo Bay. They're so secretive, and they ship them off to these. What kind of deals is he making? And I know he can do that, but they say he can't close Guantanamo Bay.
He can't close Guantanamo, but what he's doing is he's lessening the population time after time after time. And listen, I've been very clear on this. If I were president, Guantanamo Bay would stay open, and every one of those people that is there, those awful, awful people who are prisoners of war, would stay there. We cannot let them out. Exactly right. We feel as if it's been a wasted effort. And by the way, his own director of national intelligence has said that up to 30% of the people he's released have gone back into the war on terror. 30% of the people he released back into the war on terror. This is a huge mistake. Another huge mistake that is driven by philosophy, not practicality. Because he just doesn't like Guantanamo. Well, you know what, Mr. President? We don't like terrorists attacking our country. We don't like to feel unsafe and insecure in our own country. And he tells you that the reason you feel anxiety over terrorism is because you watch too much cable news. He said that. And Hillary Clinton said at the debate in New Hampshire back in December that as to ISIS, we're exactly where we want to be. I suggested she suspend her campaign and go to Paris and look those families in the eye of the 130 folks who lost their lives and tell them we're exactly where we want to be. It's outrageous. We cannot let these people continue running the national security and foreign policy operations of our country. We will not recognize the world when they're done with it. And he is sneaky about it, and this is why the other day I called him a petulant child. You see, a petulant child is someone who knows what the rules are and goes around them anyway because they think they're smarter than everybody else. He's doing that over and over again on immigration, on drug enforcement, on Guantanamo, and you can give example after example. The rule of law matters in this country, and the president should follow the laws. That's his job, to follow them and to enforce them, and he's not doing it. If I'm president, Guantanamo will remain open, and none of those people will get out. As long as the war on terror is going on, they stay there, because I don't want to put them back and give them the opportunity to come back and hurt Americans again. All right, let's go to the lady right up there in the red coat.
When you become president,
Bless you.
I only speak the truth.
Thank you.
So when you become president, what are your opinions, plans for gun control? Because it is our Second Amendment. Do you feel that we need more gun control? Do you feel that we need less gun control?
Listen, I think that we need more crime control and not gun control. Okay, and so I'm a former prosecutor, and what I learned during those years as a prosecutor is that we have plenty of laws on the books to enforce. We're not enforcing them, and we're not enforcing them against criminals. And we need to be much more aggressive on the streets of our cities to say that these folks, felons who are carrying handguns against federal law, need to be arrested and sent for mandatory jail sentences, which are on the books. First offense, 5 years, no parole. Second offense, 10 years, no parole, for being a felon carrying a gun. The other thing that I know is that none of the gun owners that I arrested, these criminals, went through a background check. None of them went through a 48-hour waiting period. They buy guns illegally on the black market, or they steal them. They use them to commit crimes, they dump them, and they go to the next one. We are absolutely aiming at the wrong problem here. Law-abiding citizens are not the problem with guns in their hands. It is criminals who are the problems, and those are the people that we need to focus our attention on. Stop trying to grab headlines by putting more laws on the books. Let's just enforce the ones that we have there already. That's my attitude towards the Second Amendment, and that's the kind of Attorney General I'll appoint. Now, this guy over here, I believe, slammed his hand on the table when I picked you rather than him for the last question. Now, I don't usually like to reinforce that type of acting out. But here's the thing. I sense that he has a very important question. Now, I'm going to take his question. Now, before I do, though, I want you to understand, I've done now in this presidential campaign about 70 town hall meetings. I've done 134 as governor of New Jersey, so I'm over 200 town hall meetings. This is an enormous risk, because when you do this, and I've done it before, it goes one of two ways. Either it's a really, really good question, where you're like, man, I'm glad I did that, or it is the one that sends you off the rails. Takes a good town hall meeting and makes it a bad town hall meeting. So stay in suspense. We are going to the hand slapper over here, and we are going to give him his chance. He's got a microphone for. I'm not giving him mine, Senator. Sir.
Tough question.
All right, here we go.
Haven't heard this answer anywhere.
All right.
Who would you like to see as your vice president?
Hey. Well, let me just say. All right, let me say this to you. Bad question. Here's why. There's no chance I'm answering that question, right? Because there's lots of people out there right now who are looking in the mirror when they get up in the morning and they're saying, Madam Vice President, Mr. Vice President. Good morning, Mr. Vice President. Good morning, Madam Vice President. And I want every one of those people who's looking at that mirror and saying that to vote for me. The minute I tell you who I prefer, I get one vote instead of like 30. So we're not going there. But what I will do is I will give you my criteria for picking a vice president. And by the way, I think it's actually nice that I'm being asked, because over the summer, no one was asking me who I'd pick for vice president, you know? I was like 1-2% in Iowa. They weren't going, who's your vice president going to be? They were like, when are you going away? So this is much better now. I'll give you my criteria. There's 3. First is, you and every American has to be able to look at this person and say, I could see this person as president. Because if you can't see this person as president, then that calls into question my judgment by picking someone and putting them a heartbeat away from the presidency when you don't believe they could actually be competent as president. Second is, I'd like to have another person with executive experience of some kind, because I want to assign my vice president some really important tasks, and I want them to be able to have the kind of competent executive experience that would make them do the tasks the right way. And I could trust them to say, go off and do this because you have the experience to be able to do it. The second is, I'd like to have someone with executive experience. The third thing is, and this is the one that makes people laugh sometimes, but I want to like the person. And here's why it's important for me to like the person and be compatible with them. If I don't like them, I'm not going to give them anything to do. I won't work with them, right? I mean, it's like anybody else. You will work with people that you don't like if you're forced to. But you're president. No one's going to force you to do anything, right? So I want to pick someone that I like and I'm compatible with. And the reason that's important is because I want that person to be a full partner. Because I don't want that person to wonder for a moment if I were to die or be disabled, that they don't know everything they need to know to sit in that chair on the first day and execute on the job. And the only way that's going to happen is if you like and trust that person. And then you will share everything you need to share with them. And then if that awful thing happens and they need to be ready, then they will be. So those are my 3 criteria. They absolutely are believable to the American people to be a president. They have some executive experience so they can do the tasks I need, and that I like them and that we're compatible so that we'll work as a team and a partnership together so that if something bad were to happen to me, that person would be ready at a moment's notice to step in. Beyond that, you're not getting anything out of me. All right?
Good answer.
Thank you. Let me say 2 things to you before we go. The first one is to say thank you. It is really gratifying to run for President of the United States and have folks like you here in Iowa spend time on your Saturday afternoon to come out and ask me good questions and listen to me, and give me a chance to convince you to caucus for me on February 1st. It's really flattering. It's an incredible compliment. And what I tell people in New Jersey when I go home and they ask me, what's it like to campaign in Iowa and New Hampshire for president? I tell them that if you're at least a bit cynical about politics and our democracy, you should come to Iowa and New Hampshire, because it will reinforce your confidence in your belief that our democracy can work. That everyday, hardworking Americans care enough about their government and the future of their country that they will take time away from their families and their friends and their businesses to come and listen to candidates and try to make an informed decision based on actually looking us in the eye and taking the measure of our character and our intellect. And so I can't thank you enough for coming and spending your time with me today. Second thing I want to tell you is this. I've mentioned my website a number of times today, and I urge you to go and take a look, especially if you're having trouble sleeping. This is very good because it's very dense. There's all kinds of policy proposals on it. It'll put you right out. It's guaranteed. Yeah, with 20, 25 minutes, you're down. It's no problem. Put it on your iPad or something and you'll be great. But I seriously want you to look at it because it lays out the things that are important to me and the steps I would take to answer the how question. For these things, how would I get it done? But I also would say to you that there's no way, no chance, that just by looking at a list of proposals that you can make the decision on who to elect president. I suspect that when Governor George W. Bush came here in 1999 and 2000 to campaign in the Iowa caucuses and held town hall meetings here, that no one got up at a town hall meeting and said, Governor, what would you do if 19 Islamic terrorists hijacked 4 American commercial airliners, flew 2 of them into the World Trade Center, 1 of them into the Pentagon, had 1 of them crash while they were trying to fly it into other key buildings in Washington, D.C.? What would you do? I suspect no one asked Governor George W. Bush that question because none of us could have possibly anticipated that something like that was going to happen. Yet, I don't know about you, but when it happened, I had a real sense of confidence and comfort that President George W. Bush would get us through it, that he had the strength of character and the will to lead our country during one of the darkest moments we've ever had, the murder of 3,000 of our citizens in cold blood by terrorists in a way that shocked all of us. And, you know, I tell you that because I want you to know, too, that if I'm the President of the United States, there are going to be things that are going to happen that we're never going to cover in one of these meetings. Something's going to happen. More than one thing's going to happen that we can never cover in these meetings. So how do you know? How do you know if the person that you're voting for will have the ability to be able to deal with these issues? So I want to end today by telling you who I am. You need to know who I am, not just what I stand for, what I believe, but who I am. And that can help you to make your decision too. So who are we? You know, I'm the product, like all of you are, of my parents. And for good and for bad, right, we're the product of our parents. I have an Irish father, and I had a Sicilian mother. Yeah, for those of you who are giggling, you're right. As the oldest child in that home, that meant that I became an expert at dispute resolution at a very early age. This was a household where arguments were had, and they were had at a very high volume with great emotion. Now, my dad today, he's 82 years old. As we speak right now, he might be done for the day now. My father is in New Hampshire going door to door for his son. He did it last weekend. He's doing it next weekend. He gets on a bus with volunteers from New Jersey and drives 6 hours to New Hampshire and goes door to door for me. Last week it was pouring rain, and I got a photo over Facebook of my father that one of the volunteers took and posted on Facebook in a big yellow rain slicker running down a driveway from having just knocked on a door, and I'm sure absolutely regaled whoever answered the door with enormously embarrassing stories about me from when I was a kid. That's my father. He's outgoing, he's gregarious, he loves to tell a story, he's a backslapper, and if he were here right now in Iowa, he would stay here, talk to all of you, hug you, and tell you, again, really awful stories that would embarrass me greatly. He's a wonderful guy, but I told him for years that he's a wonderful person, but in the automobile of life, my father was merely a passenger. My mother was the driver. Mom was judge, jury, and executioner, and she liked the last one the best. And she was the rules setter in the house. She set all the rules. My father just kind of went along. She set the rules. And the number one rule in our house was there is no suffering in silence. I mean this. She used to say it over and over again. No suffering in silence. You have a problem, I want to hear about it. Now, I think she set up this rule because she's the one who utilized it the most. Every time she was bothered by something, she would tell us. And when I got to be a teenager and I could push back a little bit, I'd say to her, Mom, enough. I've heard you. I get it. Stop. No, Christopher, you're going to listen. You're going to listen to me. I need to get this off my chest. There'll be no deathbed confessions in this family. You're going to hear it right now. This is the way we were brought up. This is the way my mother ran the house. And so I said I had a Sicilian mother because nearly now 12 years ago, my mom passed away. And she was diagnosed on Valentine's Day of 2004 with lung cancer. She had been a lifetime smoker. Mom started smoking when she was 16 years old in 1948. Before anybody knew it was bad for you. It was just the cool thing to do. Everybody who was cool smoked. And my mother started smoking, and she became addicted to smoking. And I saw her over the years really struggle. She tried to quit so many times. Gum and patches. She even tried hypnosis a couple of times, which was great for us because it kind of mellowed her out a little bit. But it did nothing on the smoking, so she stopped doing it. But she could never quit. And almost inevitably, on this Valentine's Day of 2004, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And for anybody who's gone through it, with a family member or a friend or a neighbor or a coworker, you know that lung cancer can go either really slowly or really quickly. Usually it's not in between. For my mom, unfortunately, it went really quickly. So by the end of April of 2004, I was the U.S. attorney at the time in New Jersey, and I was off at a conference in California with all the U.S. attorneys. And my younger brother called me and he said, listen, we just had to put Mom back in the hospital. She's taking a real turn for the worse. And the doctor said, if you want to see her, you need to come home right away. So I got a red-eye flight home that night from San Diego to Newark. I got in my car, I drove to the hospital, and when I got there, they had started to give her morphine. And for any of you who've gone through losing someone to cancer, you know that's kind of the last moments. She's in a lot of pain, they're just trying to make her comfortable. So it meant that she was awake and asleep often. And so I sat there by the bed for a while with her sleeping. And then she woke up. And it was so typical of my mother. She had not seen me for a week. And there was no hello or how are you. She looked at me, she said, what day is it? I said, well, Mom, it's great to see you too. My trip was good. And it's Friday, Mom, it's Friday, why? She said, what time is it? And I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. And she said, go to work. And I said, Mom, I just flew across the country to see you. I'm taking the day off from work today. I'm going to spend the day with you. And she said to me, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. I said, Mom, what are you afraid of not getting your taxpayers' money's worth? I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. This will be fine. I'm staying with you today. And she reached over and she grabbed my hand and she said to me, Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us. other than the birth of my 4 children, it was the most powerful moment of my life. My mother was giving me permission to let her go. And as I sat there and thought about what she said, I thought to myself, damn, she is right again. She's right again. There is nothing left unsaid between us because of the way she raised us. She said there would be no deathbed confession. She was right. There didn't need to be any. Every grievance had been aired. Every joy had been shared. Everything that we needed to share in our lives, we shared at the moment we needed to share it. And so I looked at her and I said, okay. And I did as I was told. I got up, I kissed her on the forehead, and I said, okay, Mom, I'm going to work. And she said, good boy. And I left. 3 hours later, she went into a coma, and 3 days later, she died. I never spoke to her again. And I have absolutely no regrets because she lived her life the way she wanted to, and she taught her children to live their lives the same way. And so I tell you that story because I want you to know that that's who I am. And, you know, if I get to become president, you're never going to have to wonder what I'm thinking. I'm going to tell you. And you're never going to have to wonder what I'm feeling. You'll be able to see it. I don't hide it. You'll never have to wonder what I'm willing to fight for because you'll see me fighting. And you'll never have to wonder how hard I'm willing to fight for the things I believe in because I was raised by a woman who taught us that you fight in the moment. You don't put it off because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring you. And so, for me, I know if my mom were still alive to see this circus that my life has become, she'd have a number of things to say, for sure. But I know 2 things that she'd say. One, she'd look at me and say something like this, so, you're running for president of the United States, Mr. Big Shot. She'd look at me and say, don't get too big-headed with me, buddy. I changed your diaper. I know who you are. Keep your head on your shoulders. My mother would want me to keep my feet on the ground, would insist that I keep my head on my shoulders and not be overwhelmed by this experience. The second thing I know she'd say to me is, if you're going to ask these people to give you the most trust that they can give to anybody outside their family, to make you the president of their country, then you better tell them everything. You better tell them everything you're thinking, everything you're feeling, because, Christopher, in a trusting relationship, that's what we do. And there can be no greater trusting relationship outside the family than between a people and their president. And so that's the kind of president I'll be. That's who I'll be when that big problem comes across the desk, when that crisis hits. That's who I'll be. The senator mentioned that I dealt with crisis in my governorship. And you saw the way I acted. And the way I acted was very simple. I put the people who I was elected to serve first, ahead of politics, ahead of the media, ahead of the pundits and the politicians. I put the people that elected me first. If you give me the chance to be president, that's exactly the way I'll act, no matter what crisis comes to our country, no matter what problem comes to my desk. That's what I'll do. That's who I am, and that's the kind of president I'll be. So you all have a big choice to make. I'm asking for your vote. You know, I'm from New Jersey. There's nothing subtle about me. I'm going to ask for your vote. I need your vote, but beyond that, I need a little more. I not just want your vote, I want your trust and your confidence too. See, your vote gets me to the White House, and that would be great. But if I don't have your trust and your confidence, I can't be a good president, because I'm going to have to make some hard decisions. I may even have to make some decisions you don't agree with. And if I don't have your trust and your confidence too, I can't be a successful president. And I don't want to go do this and fail. Our country can't afford it. The world can't afford it. So between now and next Monday, or 2 Mondays from now, the 1st of February, I hope that when you deliberate on this, that I can have your vote and your trust and your confidence. And if I do, then we're going to restore this country to the greatness that we know is within it, because we're going to empower the people of our country to make it even greater than it is today. So thanks for coming today, everybody. I appreciate it very much.